The 1980s NHL looked like a golden age of grace. Gretzky's brilliance, Lemieux's artistry, and arenas filled with pure spectacle. But beneath the flash and finesse, there was another side of the story. Darker, bloodier, and far more dangerous. Every goal had a guardian, every superstar had a shadow. These weren't just players. They were warriors in a frozen battlefield where respect was earned through pain and fear. Behind the cheers, there were broken noses, shattered helmets, and rivalries that could boil over in seconds. Because in the 80s, toughness wasn't optional, it was survival. And these 10 men, they were the reason legends stayed standing. If you're loving this deep dive into hockey's roughest era, make sure to hit that like button. It helps this video reach more true fans who remember when toughness wasn't a highlight, it was a requirement. And stick around, the names you're about to hear didn't just play the game, they changed it. Number 10, Chris Knuckles Nilan. At number 10, we start with a man whose nickname said it all, Knuckles. Chris Nilan wasn't just Montreal's enforcer, he was their firewall. He wasn't the tallest, the strongest, or the most graceful player on the ice, but no one, and I mean no one, could match his will to fight for his team. Nilan was the human embodiment of the word relentless. Every shift he took came with a promise. If you laid a hand on one of his teammates, you'd answer for it before the period was over. Born and bred in the rough neighborhoods of Boston, where toughness wasn't a choice but a requirement, Nilan brought street fight grit into the heart of hockey's most elegant franchise, the Montreal Canadiens. Drafted in 1978 and joining Montreal for his rookie season in 1979-80, he became the league's premier enforcer during the 1980s, ushering in a new edge to a team renowned for skill and finesse. Nilan defended legends like Guy Lafleur and Larry Robinson with his fists and his fury. In the 1984-85 NHL season, he achieved something almost no enforcer ever had, more than 300 penalty minutes and 21 goals in a single season. That wasn't luck. That was controlled chaos, and he made it look like an art form. But here's what most fans never realized. Behind the gloves, blood, and broken knuckles, Chris Nilan was one of the smartest players on the ice. He studied his opponents like a general preparing for battle, watching tape, memorizing habits, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. While stories of fights, like taking on multiple Rangers in a single night, are legendary in hockey culture. Verified records confirm Nilan was known for his multiple fights and games, which cemented his reputation. Nilan's fists wrote the code of respect in an era when skill needed armor. He was the storm before the storm, the heartbeat of hockey's most honorable chaos. But if you think Knuckles was intense, wait until you meet the next man, a legend whose very name became synonymous with fear itself. Number 9, Dave Tiger Williams. At number 9, we've got pure chaos in skates. Dave Tiger Williams, the man who turned punishment into performance art. To call him an enforcer would be an understatement. He was hockey's version of a wildfire, unpredictable, uncontrollable, and absolutely unforgettable. Every time he jumped over the boards, you could feel the energy in the arena shift. Fans leaned forward, opponents braced, because when Tiger was on the ice, something was about to explode. Born in Weyburn, Saskatchewan, Tiger's journey to the NHL wasn't paved with privilege or promise. He clawed his way through junior leagues, fighting for every shift, every chance, every scrap of respect. He wasn't the biggest or the fastest, but he had something even more dangerous, a complete disregard for fear. That attitude carried him to the NHL, where he quickly made a name for himself as one of the most unpredictable forces the league had ever seen. Over his career, Tiger racked up 3,966 penalty minutes, a regular season record that still stands. But those minutes weren't just statistics, they were statements. Every penalty was a warning, every fight a message. You can't intimidate the team I'm on. And then came that moment. 1980, Maple Leaf Gardens. The crowd was electric. Williams had just scored a goal, and instead of celebrating like everyone else, he did something the league had never seen. He dropped to a crouch, rode his stick like a cowboy galloping into the sunset, and grinned the entire way down the ice. It was raw defiance. A man saying, "I'll play your game, but I'll play it my way." The fans lost their minds. The league wasn't amused, but Tiger didn't care because hockey wasn't just about goals for him. It was about presence. He knew how to control a game not with a puck, but with sheer personality and danger. Williams wasn't just a fighter, he was rebellion wrapped in shoulder pads. Every bruise he left was a piece of theater, every penalty a declaration that hockey didn't belong only to the polished and the pretty. It belonged to the brave and the wild. But while Tiger roared loud, the next man hit harder, and somehow did it all with a smile that made opponents shiver. Number 8, Bob Probert. At number 8, the heavyweight champion of pain, Bob Probert. When he laced up his skates for the Detroit Red Wings, the atmosphere in the arena shifted. Fans didn't just watch, they waited. Everyone knew what was coming. There was something about Probert's presence, that calm, coiled energy before the storm, that made even the toughest opponents hesitate. He wasn't just another enforcer, he was an institution of intimidation. Between 1985 and 1990, Probert dominated the ice with a brutal blend of power, endurance, and unshakable fearlessness. Standing 6'3" and weighing over 220 pounds, he was built like a tank and fought with the stamina of a machine. But what truly made Probert terrifying wasn't just his size, it was his composure. He didn't swing wildly. He studied you, waited for your move, then delivered punishment with precision. Every team in the NHL had to answer the same question before facing Detroit. Who's brave or crazy enough to drop gloves with Proby? And then came 1987, Detroit versus Vancouver. Bob Probert versus Craig Cox, the fight that became legend long before the age of YouTube and social media. The bell rang, gloves hit the ice, and chaos erupted. For nearly a full minute, both men exchanged haymakers with terrifying rhythm. Neither fell, neither flinched. Blood on the ice, jerseys torn, knuckles split, yet Probert kept smiling through it all. It wasn't a brawl. It was a duel between warriors, a test of will that transcended hockey itself. Fans didn't know whether to cheer or gasp. Broadcasters called it one of the most brutal displays of endurance ever seen on skates. And when it was over, Probert didn't celebrate. He simply skated to the penalty box, smirking like a man who'd just proven a point to the entire league. Bob Probert didn't just fight, he endured. His pain tolerance, both physical and emotional, became the stuff of myth. He was the rare kind of enforcer who could intimidate with silence and destroy with precision. His opponents learned the hard way that Probert didn't back down, not ever. But if Probert was the storm that shook the league, the next man was the lightning that struck without warning and left no survivors. Number 7, Wendell Clark. At number 7, Wendell Clark, the heart and soul of the Toronto Maple Leafs. He wasn't just a player. He was a declaration of defiance in blue and white. The moment he stepped onto the ice, Toronto fans felt something they hadn't in years: pride. Clark wasn't the biggest guy on the roster, but his presence made the entire team seem larger. He played the game like it owed him something, and every hit, every punch, every goal was his way of collecting that debt. Drafted first overall in 1985, Clark was a paradox, a scorer who could fight, an enforcer who could lead. He wasn't built like a traditional tough guy, but his heart was twice the size of most. His hits echoed through arenas, his stare could freeze opponents in place, and his sense of timing made him lethal in every confrontation. For Toronto, a franchise desperate for identity and grit, Clark became the embodiment of hope. He didn't just represent toughness, he redefined it. Every time he dropped the gloves, the city held its breath. Because when Wendell fought, it wasn't about rage, it was about respect. Then came 1986, the night that turned him from a fan favorite into a living legend. In a heated game against the Minnesota North Stars, Clark took a vicious hit that sent him crashing to the ice. The crowd gasped. Blood streaked his face. Most players would have skated off, but not Wendell. He rose, eyes burning, dropped his gloves, and launched himself at his attacker. What followed wasn't a fight, it was a message. Within seconds, Clark dismantled his opponent with terrifying precision. The arena erupted. The sound from Maple Leaf Gardens that night wasn't just cheering, it was thunder. Toronto knew it was witnessing the birth of something rare, a warrior who could carry a city on his back. Clark's courage made him untouchable, and his leadership made him unforgettable. He wasn't the biggest, the meanest, or the strongest, but he proved that heart can hit harder than any fist. And our next player, he didn't just fight for his team, he protected the greatest player to ever touch the ice. Number 6, Dave Semenko. Number 6, the silent sentinel of Gretzky himself, Dave Semenko. When you talk about the Edmonton Oilers dynasty of the 1980s, names like Gretzky, Messier, and Curry come up first. But behind every elegant pass and record-breaking goal stood one man who made all of it possible, Semenko. He wasn't the one putting the puck in the net. He was the one making sure no one laid a finger on the men who did. To opponents, he was a looming threat. To his teammates, he was quiet comfort, a wall in human form. Without Semenko, there might be no Gretzky highlights. He was the shadow that made light possible, the calm before and often after the chaos. Playing for the Edmonton Oilers, Semenko's job was brutally simple: keep the great ones standing. And he took that responsibility personally. Every time Gretzky went down, every slash or shove, Semenko stored it like ammunition. His presence alone shifted games. Players knew that one wrong move, one dirty hit, and they'd be dealing with Semenko's fist before the next whistle. He didn't talk much, but his message was loud enough to echo through entire arenas. Then came 1983, the year Semenko cemented his reputation as the most feared bodyguard in hockey. During a heated game, a defender slashed Gretzky across the arms. The crowd saw it. Gretzky stumbled, but didn't retaliate. Semenko did. He didn't wait for a whistle or a referee's glance. He found the man, dropped his gloves mid-play, and unleashed a beating so swift and decisive that the entire arena froze. You could hear the hit. The gasps from the stands were instant. That player never touched Gretzky again, and neither did anyone else. After that night, Semenko wasn't just an enforcer, he was a myth. Gretzky once said, "He was the best teammate I ever had." Coming from the greatest player alive, that said everything. He was the quiet storm, polite, even gentle off the ice, but merciless once the puck dropped. Every dynasty needs a guardian, and Semenko was Edmonton's shield. But the next man on our list didn't bring calm, he brought chaos, rage, and a level of intensity that turned every game into a battlefield. We're only halfway through, and the hits are just getting heavier. If you haven't already, subscribe and ring the bell, because the second half of this list isn't just about fights, it's about legends. These next players didn't just throw punches, they built the code every modern enforcer still lives by. Number 5, Tim Hunter. Number 5, Tim Hunter, Calgary's brawler in the Battle of Alberta. When you think of the Calgary Flames in the 1980s, you think of fire, both in their logo and in their playstyle. And at the center of that blaze stood Tim Hunter, a man who didn't just play hockey, he enforced the very soul of it. His scarred knuckles told stories. His nose bore the marks of 1,000 collisions, and his willpower could outlast almost anyone. Hunter wasn't there for the spotlight. He was there for the war. The Oilers had finesse. The Flames had Hunter. His job was simple: make Edmonton pay for every inch of ice they took. In an era defined by the rivalry between the two Alberta powerhouses, Hunter became the embodiment of Calgary grit, relentless, unyielding, and absolutely fearless. Standing at 6'2" and weighing around 200 pounds, he didn't just fight opponents. He wore them down, one shift at a time. His stamina was legendary. He could take a punch, a cross-check, a slash, and still come back for more. He was the kind of player you didn't want to see across from you at a face-off, because you knew the next few seconds could end painfully. Then came the moment that defined him. The 1986 playoffs. The Battle of Alberta was reaching its boiling point. The Oilers were the reigning champions, and Calgary wanted blood. During one of the most chaotic games of the series, Tim Hunter found himself toe-to-toe with not one, not two, but 3 different Oilers. It was carnage on skates. The crowd was deafening. Each fight blurred into the next, gloves flying, fists connecting, sweat and blood mixing with ice. Hunter didn't win them all cleanly, but he didn't lose any either. By the end of the night, his jersey was torn, his face bruised, but his message had been delivered loud and clear. The Flames wouldn't be bullied. Hunter wasn't just muscle, he was a message carved into the heart of every rivalry. He made the Battle of Alberta what it was: raw, violent, and unforgettable. But our next player, he turned that same rage into something more. Not chaos, philosophy. A code of violence with honor at its core. Number 4, Terry O'Reilly. Number 4, Boston's enforcer-philosopher Terry O'Reilly. In an era when every hit was personal and every fight had meaning, O'Reilly stood as both poet and punisher. He wasn't just a brawler in a black and gold, he was Boston's beating heart, the man who gave the Bruins their identity when finesse wasn't enough. Fans called him the Tasmanian Devil for the way he spun chaos out of nothing. Every time he hit the ice, it was like lighting a fuse. You knew something was going to happen, you just didn't know when it would blow. O'Reilly wasn't merely a fighter, he was a captain of chaos with purpose. As Boston's emotional core in the late 70s and early 80s, he led not just with fists but with conviction. While others hid behind sticks or referees, O'Reilly met challenges head on, his blue-collar grit perfectly mirroring the city he represented. He could fight, yes, but he could also play. Over 600 career points and more than 2,000 penalty minutes. That's a rare balance of skill and savagery. He was the guy who could crush you against the boards, then set up a goal seconds later. And then came the night that defined his legend. December 23rd, 1979, Madison Square Garden, the Bruins versus the Rangers. A chaotic brawl erupted at the end of the game, and as the tension spilled over, a fan struck one of O'Reilly's teammates with a stick from the stands. Without hesitation, O'Reilly climbed the glass and stormed into the seats, barehanded, to defend his teammate. It wasn't planned, it wasn't smart, but it was pure O'Reilly. The sight of him swinging in the crowd became one of hockey's most infamous moments. The league suspended him, but Boston, they turned him into a folk hero overnight. To the fans, that wasn't a scandal. It was loyalty in its rawest form. O'Reilly taught the league that honor could have fists, and leadership could wear bruises. He didn't fight for attention, he fought for principle. He was chaos with a conscience, fire with discipline. But if O'Reilly fought for pride, the next man fought for domination, and his presence alone could turn any game into a war. Number 3, Marty McSorley. Number 3, Gretzky's second guardian angel, Marty McSorley. He wasn't just muscle on skates. He was the thinking man's enforcer, a rare blend of protector and tactician. At 6'1" and over 230 pounds, McSorley had the frame of a brawler but the mind of a general. He understood the subtleties of the game, when to hit, when to hold back, and when a single glare could do more damage than a punch. His mere presence changed the temperature of the ice. When McSorley skated toward you, you didn't just prepare to play, you prepared to survive. McSorley's story was woven directly into the legacy of Wayne Gretzky. When Gretzky was traded from Edmonton to Los Angeles in 1988, McSorley went with him, not as a coincidence, but as a necessity. The message was clear: you can move the great one, but you can't touch him. McSorley was the unspoken law of hockey's golden age, the one-man insurance policy every superstar wished they had. Opponents knew that if they so much as brushed Gretzky the wrong way, Marty would be there, and there was no polite version of what happened next. Yet behind the fist was a strategist, a player who read the game like a chessboard, predicting plays and neutralizing threats before they even began. Then came that unforgettable moment in the 1988 playoffs, a collision so iconic it's still replayed in slow motion by fans who love old-school hockey. Edmonton was locked in a brutal series, tension so thick you could feel it through the TV screen. McSorley saw an opposing forward cutting through center ice, head down, chasing the puck. He accelerated 1, 2, 3 strides and unleashed a hit so devastating the entire arena gasped in unison. Silence followed. Then chaos. The Oilers' bench erupted, the fans exploded, and momentum flipped like a switch. That single moment didn't just change the game, it reignited the dynasty. McSorley wasn't built to score goals or chase stats. He was built to make history, the kind of history written in bruises, blood, and banners. Every dynasty needs its sword and shield, and Marty McSorley was both. But our next man, he wasn't just part of history. He was history, the hammer that forged the very era of toughness itself. Number 2, Dave the Hammer Schultz. Number 2, the original hammer that forged the 80s toughness culture. Long before intimidation became strategy, Dave the Hammer Schultz turned violence into a philosophy. He wasn't just an enforcer, he was the blueprint, the man who made fighting not just acceptable, but essential. To understand the toughness of the 1980s, you have to start with the chaos Schultz unleashed in the decade before it. He didn't just hit opponents, he hit eras, reshaping the very DNA of hockey. Though his prime began in the 70s with the Philadelphia Flyers, Schultz's legacy bled straight into the early 80s. His spirit was the foundation on which every future enforcer stood. Known as the face of the infamous Broad Street Bullies, Schultz made fear a legitimate weapon of the game. Every hit, every punch, every glare carried purpose. His code was simple: respect through violence. You didn't have to like him, but you had to acknowledge him. And for most players, that acknowledgement came from the penalty box floor. Schultz didn't just play hockey, he declared war on it. Then came the season that turned him into legend, 1974-75, 472 penalty minutes, still an NHL record to this day. Think about that. A player spent nearly 8 full games of a single season in the penalty box, and his team still won the Stanley Cup. That wasn't chaos for the sake of chaos, it was orchestration. Schultz knew when to detonate, when to draw blood, and when to draw momentum. He made violence tactical, transforming intimidation into energy for his team. The Flyers fed off it, opponents dreaded it, and fans, they lived for it. They came not just to see Philadelphia win, but to see Schultz redefine what it meant to survive a game. By the early 80s, even as his career began to wind down, his influence only grew stronger. Every enforcer who stepped onto the ice carried a piece of Schultz's legacy in his fists. The unspoken rule that respect must be earned, not given. Dave the Hammer Schultz didn't just build the rulebook for pain, he became it. But our number 1, he took that rulebook, tore it to shreds, and rewrote it in his own blood. Number 1, Mark Messier. Number 1, the captain himself, Mark Messier. There are tough players, there are fearless leaders, and then there's Messier, a man who embodied both with terrifying grace. He wasn't an enforcer by title, but he didn't need to be. Every shift he played was a masterclass in controlled strength, a blend of skill and savagery that made him one of the most respected and feared players of the 1980s. Messier didn't just lead teams, he commanded them. When he skated onto the ice, you could feel the gravity shift. Every player knew this wasn't a man you wanted to cross. Messier's toughness wasn't measured in penalty minutes or brawls. It was measured in moments, the kind that turned games into mythology. He played through broken ribs, shattered teeth, deep cuts, and bruises that would sideline ordinary men for weeks. His teammates called him Moose for a reason. He was unstoppable. In Edmonton, he was Gretzky's hammer, the one who cleared paths and finished plays with bone-crushing force. When Gretzky left for Los Angeles, Messier proved he didn't need anyone's shadow. He built his own dynasty, leading the Oilers to another Stanley Cup in 1990, carving his legacy into the ice itself. Then came one of the defining moments of his legend. In a playoff series where the Oilers were on the ropes, Messier took a stick to the face, a deep gash that required stitches. Most players would have been done for the night. Messier wasn't most players. He returned to the bench with blood still drying above his eye, face bandaged, eyes burning. Minutes later, he scored to turn the momentum. And then, as if to punctuate the point, he delivered a hit so thunderous, it flipped the energy of the entire series. The crowd went ballistic. The opposing bench went silent. That was Messier's calling card. Pain didn't stop him. It fueled him. Mark Messier wasn't just part of hockey's toughest decade, he defined it. He proved that leadership wasn't about speeches or bravado, it was about surviving when no one else could. He was the face of courage, endurance, and controlled fury. The man who made toughness look like destiny. Who do you think was the toughest man of the 80s? Did your favorite make the list? Or did we leave out a legend who deserves a spot? Drop your pick in the comments below, because in an era built on blood, grit, and pride, everyone's got their own hero. If this trip down hockey's bloodiest decade fired you up, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell, because next time, we're heading straight into the 1990s when skill and savagery finally went to war. The game got faster, the hits got harder, and the gloves, they never stayed on for long. You won't want to miss it.